Welcome to World of Warcraft Q&A.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the World of Warcraft Q&A for BlizzCon 2018. Thank you for being here. Very excited. Big round of applause for our, I almost said contestants. That's not right, is it? For our panelists, we have Alex on the far end, Ian, John, and Chris. Big hand for them. For those who are wondering who the heck I am, my name is Scott Johnson. I'm the host of the Instance podcast and have been. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I've been doing it since 2006. Been playing WoW since 2003 in the Friends and Family Alpha. Yeah. And we established the world's largest guild at one point. They're still going strong. The great big worldwide community. Had some great interviews in the past. People like Chris Metzen and others. If you haven't heard the show, you should check it out. And this year, I got a Podcaster Hall of Fame award, and I would like to say that if it wasn't for World of Warcraft or the Warcraft community, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you all for that very much. I'm humbled to be here, and thank you, Blizzard, for inviting me. All right, let's get right to it. We are going to jump into our first question and not waste any time. And we're going to start with audience questions. It's over here, right? There we go.
Hello, once again. My name is Ro. And I have a question that's somewhat related to both lore and the Warfront system. I'm sorry, not the Warfront system. I was thinking of something else. Anyhow, we've seen more choices and more player agency in this expansion, particularly in the beginning when you had the option to wear masks and spread the blight. And for some people that are in the know, for upcoming content, there is a quest line involving Saurfang that also gives a moment of agency for Horde players. I'm not going to go further than that. That being said, how important is it to the team that these moments of player agency happen throughout the course of the expansion for both factions, and how important is it for these moments to have repercussions for the future?
It's a great question. Moments of agency can only really happen if there are repercussions, because otherwise it doesn't really matter, right? And then you have to ask yourself as a developer and as a player, why did I even have to go through all this rigmarole? So for us, this is more of an experiment. I think we want to be careful about the number of things that we give you these choice moments for. Don't want to send you out in the field to collect pumpkins and ask you whether or not you want to collect the orange ones or the yellow ones. I think those are pumpkin colors. Because that's kind of a nonsense choice. However, if it's, do I want to back the Banshee Queen or do I want to back Saurfang, that's an interesting choice. That is your choice. And we want to make sure that we do have repercussions for the actions you've taken and that it does go somewhere. So right now what we're really kind of doing is testing the waters. And we want to make sure, though, anytime you are presented with that type of a choice, that it has, that it matters.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, next question. Thank you for that. Oh!
All right, so Mr. Johnson, I have two questions. Alliance, I don't want to offend you. The first question is, Horde, where are you at? Good, I'm glad you're here. Oh, hell. Alliance, where are you at? Excellent, excellent. My question is on behalf of the Horde. Good Lord, everyone, can we have a round of applause for Alex's sexy V-neck? Look at that. It's one of the things I miss most about work is that sexy man right there. The second question is, when is the Horde getting its true war chief back. That was it.
Thrall? You're talking about Thrall? Thrall.
Wait, who?
Thrall? I think he means
Yeah,
Thrall.
He
Alex, you want to do that one?
I could field it probably. I miss you. We all do. That's a great question, person I've never met before. I had no idea you'd be here. You know, I'm going to guess, I will surmise, there may very well be a job posting up soon on the Orgrimmar War Board looking for new war chief. I don't know. It might happen. And if there is, we'll call you.
Hey, love you guys. I miss you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Metzen. Voice of Thrall confirmed. All right, next question, please.
How are you going to follow that one?
I apologize to whoever has to follow that. I'm sorry.
Good luck.
Hi. My name's Reckles. I run the YouTube channel Want to Buy Gold. I'm a gold maker. I'm here on behalf of all of them, and my question is that the 20% auction house fee has hurt a lot of casual players. Did you have any other ideas when you were implementing it, and when will it be removed, if so?
So the 20% auction house cut is only taken if you list an item and it doesn't sell. And it only applies to select stackable trade goods like flasks or herbs. And this was part of trying to nudge players a little bit to not make so many single stack listings, because you pay the same cost if you're listing a stack of 20 or 100 as you do if you're listing a single one. That said, it's a Band-Aid. There is actually a pretty fundamental rewrite of our auction house architecture that's required. And yeah, it's pretty long in the tooth. And I think as we've been able to increase concurrent realm populations over the years, we finally hit a point where actually one of the limiting factors on how many people we can put in a single realm at the same time is the auction house just crumbling under that load. So we're trying to just kind of pump the brakes a little bit, but we need to rebuild the foundations. It's something we're actively working on.
Okay.
And then at that point, there'll be no need for the Band-Aid anymore.
Good. Thank you.
Before I take the next question, it strikes me that the auction house fees, if people are complaining about them, not saying he was, but generally speaking, people don't want to spend more gold on more stuff. I just have a recommendation. If you haven't played Classic yet here on the show floor, go be reminded what it's like to not have any money. 1 gold, take you a long time. All right, next question, please.
Hi, my name is Wayne, and the question I have, will the items in WoW Classic, will the transmog be added to the live Battle for Azeroth account on the shared Steam account? Like the remove Diaphy's armor and the various other items.
This is John. I think your question's related to, you want to play Classic, and you want to know if the things that you're getting in Classic are going to make their way over to Modern WoW.
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
It's really important to us that we keep those ecosystems separate. A lot of you, like me, have played from the beginning, and the things that you earn, you want to make sure that they have that value to you in Modern WoW. We also want to make sure that our Classic players that go through that themselves will have that opportunity, and they can grind the way we did.
Yep.
So.
But does that mean that, John, maybe there's opportunity for, you play a lot of Classic, you do some real good work there, and suddenly in the real game you have a pet you wouldn't have otherwise because you've achieved level 40 and got him out. You want to separate that stuff completely.
Yeah, so not to imply that Classic is not the real game.
Right, right, of course.
But yeah, I think it's about motivation. I think if you're playing World of Warcraft Classic, it should be because you enjoyed that experience, you're having fun doing it, not because you're just trying to unlock some achievements in BFA.
Makes sense. Thank you for your question.
Hello.
Next up.
Yeah, I got a question. Sorry, Chris, you did a blog post a while back showing off class relics. And I was just wondering if you had any plans of ways you're going to further enhance that class fantasy.
Yeah, so I did a blog post a while ago. I might have jumped the gun on that one a little bit early. We've tried to, kind of infuse that into a few systems since that time. You'd be amazed at how difficult it is to put a book on somebody's hip in World of Warcraft. We've kind of covered your character with every possible combination of things.
Maybe on the shoulders?
Just a couple books on the shoulders? Done.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Well, you just solved the problem. We're done.
Amazing.
Good.
Thank you.
No. Yeah, we're going to continue on. We actually are actively working on that. It's something we're probably going to see in Heritage armor moving forward, probably a little bit more piecemeal in individual armor sets as opposed to like a wholesale solution. But to answer your question, we also are still working on it. So.
Great. Next question, please.
Hi, Mr. Blizzard. My name is Just Wait from Revive on Storm Reaver. Please don't mistake me for the Just Wait from method. I'm an NA knockoff. It's spelled W-E-I-G-H-T. So that said, I feel like character progression, especially when it comes to leveling, is not quite satisfying. For instance, say if you're going from level 60 to 64, it takes you 3 hours, you only gain one meaningful ability, no talent, nothing. Wouldn't it be better to just implement a level squish so you gain one level in those 3 hours and you gain one ability? So even though you're playing the same amount of time, it just feels psychologically better.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We are not satisfied with what leveling has turned into at the high end especially, right? We understand when you have 10 levels and you're just going through them, and with the way the world scales now, you're not even necessarily getting access to new content along the way. There's a good argument to be made that Legion and Battle for Azeroth both effectively only had 2 levels, pre-110 or pre-120 at max level, and everything along the way were little hash marks. A level squish would be, it's definitely a big ordeal, and there's some concern about how that would be taken psychologically. I think I'm actually curious to hear feedback from the community. There's something about logging in one day, and you're like, wait, I used to be level 120, and now I'm level 60, and now I have to re-earn 65 or 70 or something. What does that even mean? But we agree something needs to change. It's actually one of the top things we're discussing as we look at the road ahead, because it's not tenable both to keep adding as many levels at the top end as we're doing without meaning behind them, and even just leveling up, going long stretches with no new abilities, no new talents, that's not satisfying or well-paced.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blizzard.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Is that like a new name for you? Can we call you that now?
Please don't.
Okay.
That's
Collectively, they are Mr. Blizzard from now on. Let's all remember that moving forward.
We can all be Mr. Blizzard.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering what steps you might be taking to address the toxicity that's kind of pervasive in the public chat channels.
Really? So first and foremost, our values are very much about having everyone have a good time in World of Warcraft. Whether it's families together, whether it's friends that have discovered each other in World of Warcraft, and it's super, super important to us that we retain that. And it's much more worth it to us, even if we're losing someone that is highly toxic, been with us a long time, and unfortunately has become toxic. It's worth it to us to lose that person from the community than to lose all the people that they might affect in a negative way. So we've taken a lot of measures in the last year to be more aggressive with that. We do listen to the reports that you make. We're not always good about letting you know that, because oftentimes we have to do a lot of investigation behind the scenes to ensure that a person truly is being toxic and it's not just some friends trying to pull a prank on them. Not that that would ever happen. We're also going to be instituting some technology that we've seen in some of the other Blizzard games that have allowed us to use the miracle of AI to look at text messages that go back and forth to be more responsive and faster in responding. So thank you for the question. Expect us to be much more thoughtful and better at this, but it's something we're active with all the time.
Thank you.
And we can do more, by the way. We as players, we can do more. That's all I'm saying about that. Next up, please, go ahead.
And just a quick thing, follow up on that. If you want to learn more about those initiatives in particular, there's a panel actually right on this stage after this called Play Nice, Play Fair that will go into some of what we're doing at a Blizzard-wide level.
Oh, great.
Oh, is it my turn? Hi. Thank you guys so much for doing this. My name is Ben Affleck. I've got kind of a hard-hitting question, I guess, but why is there so much RNG in the game? And and do you have plans to, I guess, sort of move away from that, where the time that we spend, we know we're working towards something and we can actually get that thing?
Yeah. So, definitely a concern we hear a lot. I think throughout the history of World of Warcraft, we've always tried to strike a balance or find a way to navigate the waters of delivering rewards and having goals that you can work towards. I think our concern with something that's just completely deterministic, where things are on a vendor, there are times back in the day where to get a set piece, you had to both get a drop and grind a certain number of emblems or badges in Wrath in order to buy that item. There's a point where you can just actually mark the date on the calendar, where it's like, all right, 13 days from now, I'm going to get this, and then 10 days later, I'm going to get the second piece, and 5 days after that, I'll get this. And there's no excitement or reward along the way. It's just steady progress towards a goal. That's not, I think, the world we want to live in its entirety. The flip side, obviously, is one where nothing feels predictable, nothing feels certain. That's a problem also. And frankly, that's been part of WoW from the start. I think in the very early days, much less loot drop than did today, and the challenge was generally, yes, there was a fixed item, but you might literally never see it. Like in Burning Crusade, my guild was killing Gruul the Dragon Killer literally for like 14 months trying to get a Dragonspine trophy to drop. We only ever saw one over the course of 40 consecutive kills. Now, in today's world, there's a lot more loot. You're much more likely to see the item that you want, but there's more variability within it. In Tides of Vengeance going forward, we're reintroducing a couple of vendors, notably for Azerite armor through the Mythic Keystone system, as well as salvaging or disenchanting gear. I think we've perhaps swung too far in the pure randomness side, and I think trying to pull back and find a middle ground where you can feel like you're working towards some specific goals, especially with important gear slots that are very crucial to fill, while there's still that chance of excitement where you don't know what a boss is going to drop and you're hoping that the thing drops and you're excited when it does, as opposed to really going into your raid night knowing, well, really, okay, I'm going to end up 20% closer to my goal, but there's no chance of anything cool happening along the way.
It's actually a really good follow-up to that. There was a listener, or rather a questioner that was going to be here, couldn't be here, unfortunately is ill today, but he had this question, leads right into what you were saying. Can you put a smart loot system on our mythic caches?
So, yeah, that's an area where randomness is very keenly felt because you're pulling from a gigantic pool of items. That's part of why we really focused one of our solutions to improving Azerite armor delivery on the Mythic Keystone system. Because, yeah, right now, if you want a specific helm, let alone a helm, period, there's no guarantee that any number of weeks of running Mythic Dungeons is going to give you one. So that's one piece. Another is, I think we've definitely discussed, we don't have anything to announce right now that we can implement, but it would be great to have some improvements in sort of not really bad luck protection, but streak breaking when it comes to seeing the same slot multiple times, because it's like, hey, the system already gave you a pair of boots. You probably don't need 2 more pairs of boots later on in the month. I think there's more we can do there.
Yeah. We have a question about Azerite gear. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Zakul from Storm Rage. Shout out to Zeros to Heroes. I would just like some more information on the future of Azerite gear. So how does the dev team see Azerite gear evolve and improve through 8.1, 8.2, and on?
So with Tides of Vengeance, we have a set of improvements that we're looking to roll out. I think there's a few challenges with the current system. There isn't really enough choice within the gear that you get. You might get a piece of gear and feel like, well, okay, this just has one trait that's designed for the spec I want to use it for. I guess I'm going to pick that one. Thanks, Blizzard. Whereas in Tides of Vengeance, once Season 2 begins and beyond, you'll actually have 2 outer rings that contain a total of 3 traits, and so you can pick different permutations. You'll have much more ease of stacking 3 of one, mixing a few of another. If you want, you could actually get 1 point in each of 6 different traits to get the non-stacking benefits of those if you like. That also means that there'll be 3 times as many pieces of gear that have any single trait on them. So if you decide that there's a certain build that complements your playstyle, you can more readily work towards that. Now, we're continuing to add new Azerite traits. We are replacing some of the ones that feel, frankly, kind of lackluster, as well as just broadening the pool as a whole. and we're going to continue to do that as Battle for Azeroth advances. And then I think as get even further beyond Tides of Vengeance, we're definitely looking at additional ways to grow the system, including maybe adding more depth to the Heart of Azeroth in particular, and having some choices that you make that are meaningful within that, a bit more like the artifact weapons that we knew from Legion.
Thank you.
Real quick, there's been a lot of questions about Azerite in the last few months, obviously. The other thing we've seen a lot, and especially in questions submitted today, were about global cooldown. So many people asking questions for this Q&A are asking this question. Are you going to pull more things back off the QCD, or excuse me, GCD, the global cooldown? They really want that. Okay.
So yes, this was an experiment that we undertook in beta, where I think we took a look at the range of abilities across our classes and noticed that over time, more and more of them had come off the global cooldown, to the point that some specs, like some monk specs in particular, might literally have 10 of their abilities that all were off the global cooldown. We're also looking at the issue of offensive cooldowns and how they synergized, where often you would just talent into something new and add it as an extra line to your macro that was the same keybind that you'd had before with literally 0 additional gameplay. That's something, so we started by pulling way, way back. And then quickly, based on an initial round of feedback, put some things back off the GCD. And we already have announced that we're in Tides of Vengeance. For Prot Warriors, Ignore Pain is coming back off the GCD. So I think where we stand now, we are pretty satisfied with the offensive cooldown portion of it. Where, yes, there are some specs that still give feedback that, I still feel like I need to push 3 separate individual buttons before I can really get into my rotation. We don't think the answer is to take all those back off the GCD so you just macro them into one button press. It's more there a question of questioning the need for those abilities to exist, designing the class around them, or just changing them so they feel cooler and more powerful to push and have some clear effect, like dealing damage or exploding in a burst of healing. And it's not just like a state change that enables you to do better later. I think the biggest area, though, where we've heard feedback are some movement and utility abilities. When it comes to movement in particular, I think even though we gave a lot of these abilities a shorter half-second global cooldown, in practice, the concern isn't so much about being able to do something after you charge in, it's about being able to charge or heroic leave out after getting in that last-second execute and dodging the boss's AoE that felt very empowering that you can no longer do. We agree, we're going to take those movement abilities back off the GCD in Tides of Vengeance.
All right, that's awesome. Back to the audience, please. Your question.
My name is Holy Shank, and while there's a lot of amazing gear, sometimes a piece that you really want to equip just doesn't fit your theme. I was wondering if we'll ever get like a color wheel or be able to dye our armor.
Yeah,
Sounds like a question for you.
Yeah, so this has come up frequently, and like the big answer is not for everything, right? Not for every existing piece of armor in the game. And I need to give you a deeper answer. I got to art out a little bit, so please forgive me for the long-winded art answer. But when you talk about color wheels and shifting color, you're talking about tinting. Tinting is somewhat antithetical to our approach of how we create color and textures in WoW. When we paint the textures that we paint them much in the same way that you would like a traditional oil painting. So there are all kinds of layering of, if you look at purple, it's not just purple, it's blues and reds, greens, contrasting colors, and all of that color information is what gives you depth. And that depth is what makes the world look as rich as it does. So the challenge there being that if we pull that out, I feel like Bob Ross right now.
You are.
The happy little trees are making color.
Less here.
So at the same time, I understand, right? Like I'm probably the worst at that, where I just can't get my boots to look right in my set, and I want to be able to color them the way that they fit into the rest of my set. So the way I could see that working would be probably not necessarily like going back and tinting every asset that exists in the game currently, because that would require us shifting them to gray and that grayscale, and then actually just adding like a core color on top of that you could shift, which I feel like really wouldn't. We tried a little bit of that right at the end of Burning Crusade, when we wanted to get a lot of armor sets out really quickly and did a test to see if tinting would work. And I mean, I think like most people probably remember that era as like the clown era of World of Warcraft. That was on us too for not necessarily giving you the best choices to wear, and now we have transmogrification, which will help that. Moving forward, I think the system that we could use would be something if it was more isolated to like one armor system that was a part of a bigger system, a game system within the game. I could see something like that so that we were able to handcraft each one of those colors so that when you shifted it, you still had that color depth and it didn't lose all of the magic that makes WoW look the way it does.
Thank you very much. Great question. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Linkstery. I'm Daromir. So, as you know, you've taken off a lot of like situational abilities over time, like a lot of niche abilities. And those are actually a lot of fun to me. So, if it results in the homogenization of utility, would you be willing to diversify the gameplay of specs back to a level that we saw in the Mists of Pandaria?
So I think that situational abilities, I think, it can be cool. And they don't compete in the same way for your moment-to-moment mind share when you're trying to figure out what your core keybinds are, what you should press. I think we look at those separately than we look at the core rotational moment-to-moment gameplay. So we're not averse by any means to reintroducing or adding new abilities where it makes sense. I think the concern with some of what Mists and Warlords era talents led to was a lot of just repeatedly shoring up weaknesses, and that's that exact homogenization that I think you mentioned in your question. We'd rather double down on strengths and have classes and specs stand apart from each other so that each have moments where they can excel and moments where the people around them, where your friends, where your raid group, where your arena team, your battleground team is saying to themselves, man, I'm glad we have an X because they bring something special here, as opposed to, okay, let's get one of these 6 specs to fill this hole.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about server population. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. With CRZ and phasing off the table for Classic WoW, how will you address server population concerns in Classic, both with caps and possibly with low pop realms?
Okay, so for some folks who've been jumping into the Classic demo, you may have noticed that if you jump in with your friend, you're not necessarily always seeing each other in the same version of the Barons right now. That is sharding. There has been a lot of concern and discussion expressed around it on the internet. We understand. So first off, the demo is kind of a special case, right? Because it's not an organic world where everyone is spread out. It's literally every single character using a template being created in the exact same point in the world in Barons or Westfall. We leverage that tech to make the demo experience run more smoothly. Now that said, we recognize that launching WoW Classic poses a couple of unique challenges. Unlike launching a traditional game that's brand new, where you can assume that everyone who is jumping in there on launch day has the intent to at least explore playing it long term, we expect that early on with Classic, there are going to be some people who are there, die-hard dedicated, they're racing to defeat Ragnaros and Onyxia. There are going to be others who just want to check it out casually. They just want to see what all the fuss is about. They want to see what they missed. And our concern is, I think exactly as you suggest, what's that going to look like? What's that going to do to realm communities as sub-server populations may dwindle over time? That is where we are looking at using sharding in a very limited way. We understand, and I understand completely, that sharding is antithetical to the concept of a cohesive Classic community where you're competing over limited resources. When Lord Kha'Zix is up and guilds are racing to defeat him, there needs to only be one Lord Kha'Zix. If you're trying to if you're trying to lock down the thorium veins that spawn in limited sections of the world, you should be competing over limited resources. That said, the first few weeks, when everybody is packed into Valley of Trials, when everybody is packed into Elwyn, we think we can use sharding there in a limited, time-limited way to solve the initial launch day load problems, while making sure that in the long run, as server communities solidify, there's a healthy population and a single world for everyone to live in.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Pixel from the Barracuda Death Squad on Tichondrius. Yesterday, we just announced that we're going to be having Mechagon coming out. You guys explicitly mentioned that we're going to be actually having the goblins and the gnomes. I believe you said team up. I don't know if you said if they're going to have a beef. But, hey, whatever works, right? There's going to be explosions, so it'll be great one way or another, right? So, one of the things that I did notice, I am a Cata kid, so I came in with Gen Greymane, the Worgans, of course the Goblins. I play only Goblins, which leads me to believe, hey, where are my Goblins at? the Gnomes, not so much. I don't like you guys. All right, hey. I'll see you in Mechagon. But I noticed that Gen Greymane is obviously getting the spotlight a lot lately, especially in Battle for Azeroth and, of course, of Legion. I was wondering, will we be seeing any sort of development on the backstory of Gallywix? How has being part of the larger horde kind of affected him as a leader? Is he just this two-dimensional, money-grubbing dude that, you know, we can't really trust as far as we can throw him, which is a kind of far.
It's pretty far,
Granted, but if you're a gnome, how about that? So, but will we be seeing any more development on him? Any more development as far as like what's his attachment to his people, type of thing?
That's a great question. I think he's a three-dimensional money-grabbing character, frankly.
I like that. Thank you.
But it's a good identifier. You know, when they finally let me make the Pleasure Palace an actual Pleasure Palace, when that day comes, we will have all of Azshara covered with his skyscrapers, and you will fully be able to experience the goblins as they were meant to be. But until then, we're going to look into it. Yes.
All right, all right.
But I like my idea.
That sounds amazing.
That's a
See?
That's a good one.
I'd quest in there all day.
Absolutely.
There's no question in there.
All right. If we're getting Azshara, though, what's happening with the cannon? That's all I need to know. Are we firing that? No?
Right?
Right?
That's an amazing I ask that every day, quite honestly.
What is happening with that cannon?
How do you make a big cannon and never fire it? Foolish. We're going to fire that cannon.
I'll be honest, I was going to give a shout out to Hazakastas first, but you're my new favorite dev, so thank you so much. Just fire the cannon.
Sorry, man.
Playing favorites.
I thought we were Mr.Blizzard. That's gone now. That's not a thing. And that went pretty quick.
All right. Hey, thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure. Before I go, I have one last thing I had to do.
Okay. Yeah. I think he just wanted to live there and like just stay there for the rest of the day. All right, next question, please.
Hi, I'm Maruna from the Harlequin Gang and the Choice of Nyalotha. Love you guys. And I know you get this question every year, but can we, in regards to transmog restrictions, can we ever expect more freedom when it comes to transmogging into different types of armor, different armor classes?
Yeah, can my hunter ever wear priest armor, for example?
I mean, if you want non-functional,
I mean, I kind of want to.
Really low armor, but no. So some of that is about class fantasy. It's about silhouette. It's about, you know, when you see a human wearing plate mail, you can draw certain inferences about who they are, what classes they may be, and then once you see them take a couple of actions, you learn a bit more about them. So that's why those restrictions have existed really from the start. It's also a little bit of a, you know, it would be kind of a one-way street because cloth wearers can't use plate at all, period, whereas plate wearers can technically use all armor just because of how skill specializations work under the hood. And so it would be like this weird boon for warriors and paladins, but literally do nothing for mages and priests. That said, we have been loosening those restrictions in certain places with cosmetic armor sets, notably the heritage armor sets that can be used by a given race no matter what class you are, which give you a chance to earn a distinctive look that may differ from the regular gear available to your class. And we're excited to keep introducing new heritage armor sets as content updates roll out. Looking at other transmog restrictions, I know you asked about armor, but I figure I'd throw in there that we're actually, in Tides of Vengeance, going to make you able to transmog over fist weapons with an array of one-handed weapons. Woo! So, one step at a time, chipping away at those restrictions. Sorry, we still can't fix wands because wands are weird and they actually do range damage with unique animations, but for now, fist weapons.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing how much looser you can make those restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Rez. Shout out to the BNC. That was Chris Messens earlier. All right, my question. How are you going to differentiate between what Sylvanas is doing and Garrosh did?
So between Garrosh, yeah, what's the difference between Sylvanas and Garrosh at this point?
Well, these are my favorite kind of questions.
You're welcome.
The kind I can't answer. Well, the story's not done. And there's much left to discover. There's much left to explore. And yes, I'm going to tell you, wait and see, and of course all of that. But I will say this. If I were Sylvanas and looking at what Garrosh had wrought across the world, I'd probably think Garrosh was an amateur.
Agree. Long live the Banshee Queen.
Yeah. Try not to show too much horde bias up here. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Drishnu. I am a proud Shadow Priest and Sylvanas supporter. My question is that this entire Horde versus Alliance, there's been a lot of struggles between the two factions. There's war fronts, which is direct zones, and island expeditions, which are races for resources between the factions. My question is, why, if we're on an island expedition or in a war front where we're directly against the other faction, why are the PvP talents not being activated?
So, I mean, I guess, sorry if this is like, I guess, a technical, literal answer, but because you're not fighting other players. And I think, PvP isn't necessarily, it's not just Horde versus Alliance. Horde versus Alliance can express itself throughout outdoor questing, in the new Battle of Dazara lore that's coming in Tides of Vengeance, and more. I think PvP talents are specifically tailored to provide an array of options for fighting other players of regular, character classes, and apply even when you're the same faction, right? In Arena, you might be 2 Alliance teams or 2 Horde teams facing each other. We also think it's important that the abilities that are available to you not vary drastically based on situations that you're jumping into that don't feel very specific. Like if you are opting into PvP, if you go into a battleground or an arena, yes, you may have your PvP talents activate and a new ability or 2 become available in your bars. But when you just drop into an island or go into a warfront or enter an area of world quests where there's an assault active, that shouldn't be drastically changing out from under you suddenly. I think it's also part of why in war mode, we opted to turn those on by default in all situations rather than having them toggle on dynamically if you jump into PvP combat.
A follow-up question to that is that there was an announcement of being able to do battlegrounds using the island expedition technology of the NPCs. Will the PvP talents not activate there then? Because we're not playing actual players?
Good question. That's a problem with legalistic technical answers. We haven't determined for sure. I think we probably would turn on PvP talents because it's a battleground. That's a PvP brawl. And there, you're fighting against AI opponents that are a literal reconstruction of a Frost Mage or a Moonkin. And it's a Night Elf Frost Mage using, or Night Elf Druid or Human Mage using actual player abilities. Whereas in Island Expeditions, you're fighting Alliance adventurers that are maybe, they're a bit cleverer and they jump a bit more than regular NPCs, but they're not a literal WoW character class.
All right, thank you.
Quick follow-up on Island Expeditions. If I'm leveling a Druid exclusively to 120 in Island Expeditions, do you consider me a weirdo for that?
No.
No. Do you encourage that behavior? Like, is it okay if somebody's leveling?
That's fine. Yeah, that's why we made them
All right.
available. Once you unlock them, we actually buff the experience you get from normal expeditions. And quick plug, in Tides of Vengeance, we're also adding an account-bound item that unlocks flight paths so that you don't have to worry about not having any of the flight paths and having to re-explore the entire world if you level your alt via Island Expeditions.
So I'm not so weird after all. Next question, please.
I mean, you might be just not for that.
It's arguable, yeah.
Hi, guys. I'm a Cindy from Mal'Ganis, and my question is, will there be a revamped Mythic Keystone leaderboard so we don't have to go to a third-party site?
Yes. Actually, sort of. So it's basically, so the problem is the leaderboard still functions as a leaderboard, and I think being able to see the highest keys that have been done on your realm or in the region in a given week, that's still valuable, and that's not, that's the core functionality there. The challenge is that it's also the only window into your character's progression, and the fact that you do a Mythic 7 or a Mythic 10 on a high pop server late in the week isn't tracked in the leaderboard is a problem there. So by Tides of Vengeance, we're looking to just add that information directly to the Armory profile. So that's similar to the history that you see when you open up your own Mythic Dungeon pane. You can see what your times for the week are or what your best times for the season are. That will just be available on a character basis. You don't have to worry about whether you made the leaderboard or not. Even if you do a Mythic 4, that will still be there as part of your profile.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm another proud Shadow Priest from Crom US Lane Aragos. And my question is, low-performing specs get a bad reputation that persists long after they're buffed. Can you do anything to help Shadow, Shamans, and Ferals find their pickup groups?
Yes, I think it's a mix of, that's a huge motivator for us when it comes to balance. To some extent, community perception almost matters more than reality in that regard. It doesn't matter if objectively, bots or whatever can perform equally. If you as a player are logging in trying to find a dungeon group or trying to find an arena team on a given night and you keep getting turned down because of the community perception of your spec, you can't have fun playing the game. And you are entirely justified in blaming Blizzard for failing to give you the experience that you want and deserve. And so that's something that, balance is obviously part of that. Buffs are part of that. Socializing those changes are part of it. Sometimes, frankly, we need to overbuff something to get the community to take note. One little call out, I think to some extent, the community doesn't always do themselves a favor in this regard. There's a fine line between lobbying for change and trying to get Blizzard's attention and constantly sort of putting down your own class, right? I think when class discords are constantly making memes about how they're all on the bench or they're all on suicide watch, someone else goes and sees that and they're like, well, if all the shaman are talking about re-rolling, I don't want one of those in my group. When actually they're like maybe 2 or 3% behind and could just use a little help. So members of the classes, members of the specs, try to look out for yourselves too, but we hear you. We know we need to take action when classes are falling behind, when specs are falling behind. Community input drives that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Now, because you guys are so awesome and your questions are so amazing and mind-blowing, we literally have time for one more. And I apologize for that, but we're going to get to it and get one more question in. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, so thank you.
No pressure.
My question today is, are there any plans or considerations to bring back tier sets or gear related of some sort to give definition of class identity?
So I think,
I miss them.
Sure. So I think within Battle for Azeroth, we're trying something different this time. It's a mix of the way the Azerite armor system plays out with material-based sets, but I think it also gives us a chance to give you a set of gear that, from a troll raid that feels like a set of gear from a troll raid. Or when you delve into Nazjatar and Ashara's palace, getting an expression of what Naga armor might look like, so that it's very clear where that item came from, versus what does a Naga expression of Death Knight look like, or Naga expression of Paladin look like. We stopped doing that after a couple of attempts because it really muddied the waters a lot. Like a Fel Mage set looked a lot like a Warlock set a lot of the time. That said, I wouldn't say that this is the path we're going to take forever, and it's quite likely that class-themed armor sets will see a return in the future. But for the time being, it's, I think, pretty cool to see a broader range of visual styles executed at a very high level of fidelity from our armor sets, from raids, from warfronts, and more.
Thank you so much.
I think I'm going to do one question from home. Let's see. Yurnariel from Europe asked a question that I think we can get to really quick here, and this is good because of the timing. Regarding Classic, are we staying on this patch forever, or will WoW Classic eventually get its own expansions?
So
a real easy one.
Exactly. Honestly, right now, we're just focused on restoring and getting that 2006 original WoW experience in players' hands. Once the game is out there next summer, we'll do what makes sense. At that point, it's a full-fledged live service alongside Battle for Azeroth, and we look forward to updating it for a long time to come, and we'll listen to our players. We'll do what's right for the community, what's right for the game.
Perfect. I want to thank everybody so much for being here. Thank you for sitting in. Thank you, panel. Big round of applause for these guys. They did a killer job today. It was a real honor to be here, to speak to you, to talk to those at home. I hope you have a fantastic and safe rest of your BlizzCon today. Have a great time. We'll see you next year for another WoW Q&A. Oh yeah, one more thing.
Thank you all for the great questions. Especially thank you to those who didn't get a chance to ask them, who lined up. Apologies for that. We have your questions. We will do our best to get an answer up on the forums within the next week or so for the questions that didn't get asked, because you deserve it. Sorry again.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great BlizzCon.